People question my choices, but I don't question my choices. My name's Donna McNeil, and this is my renovation story. This church was built in 1852 by a man named General Hiram Berry, who sadly lost his life in the American Civil War. But he also was involved in the lumber industry, and this house has no nails. It's pegged together, and the beams are hewn, and it's remained over all these years pretty plumb, which says a lot to the quality of building in that era. And of course, Rockland's famous for shipbuilding, and I think some of those shipwrights came and worked on this house, and so it's incredibly well built. I don't know the date on this, but it was sold to the Salvation Army. They dropped the ceilings, they created a bunch of little rooms here and there. They made little offices up where the choir loft is. They used cheap materials. The integrity was destroyed. You know, God bless Peter Davis, who came along and bought it from the Salvation Army. He had a high aesthetic. He was an artist. He was a guitar maker. And he came in and let this place breathe again. He repaired the tin ceilings. He put in new windows, a heating system, all the kind of grunt work that doesn't interest me too much, but really saved the place. I feel like I really continued the work that Peter Davis started and honored his vision for this place. When I first looked at this place, there was a refrigerator plugged in over there, and there was an old pool table that was serving as a dining room table. There was a stove plugged into the wall. There was no cabinetry at all. First thing I did after I painted the floors was make a kitchen, and I really wanted it to feel like a bar because I knew I wanted to have events in here and I wanted people to feel comfortable. I wanted it to seat a lot of people so people could sit down and have a drink and feel like they were in both a private and a public space. It's all IKEA. This looks like Corian, but it's actually, I bought it at Lowe's. It's a sort of an imitation version. I'm so happy with it. It's been here for 7 years and it doesn't have a single mark on it because you can sort of buff them out. And I made this very thick. You know, you could go with the thin stuff, but if you make it thick, then it looks more expensive, even when it's really not. I saved money by going on IKEA, but I think it looks pretty high-end, and I bought really nice appliances. There's a Bertazzoni stove, Fisher Praxel fridge, and this beautiful double-drawered dishwasher. You can do a little bit, save water, or do a larger wash, or do both of them if you have a dinner party. But the sink and the faucet and everything, this is still all IKEA. You know, I think you can find super high aesthetic with not much cost if you look around. These are antiques, they're hammered. Somebody downtown did them. I found them in an old junk shop. Stuff like that, I just kept collecting and made a kitchen. I didn't work with a designer. Everything is just my idea. I'm also not one of these people that sets up a Pinterest board and, you know, thinks about what everybody else is doing. I never do that. It's just all sort of, comes from inside. I've been a curator and a supporter of the arts my entire life. So I have a keen visual sense. I can just imagine it. You know, we all have our stuff. It's undoubtedly a space that I created and is of me and my aesthetic, but I want other people to enjoy it. And I have made different spaces that I think different personalities, if you will respond to. The downstairs guest room is more masculine. The upstairs is I call it the princess room. It has a very high bed. It's very Victorian. It's got some tchotchkes in there. And I really wanted this downstairs space to be a library, but it's kind of not working like that, so I'll change that eventually. But that is also a very austere space with a kind of Donald Judd-inspired daybed in there and a collection of Turkish urns. So there was this room up there that was like a mystery room. It had an old-timey privacy window, but you open the door and there was no window, there was nothing in there. It was just this dark space. Because my bedroom's up there, I didn't want to have to come downstairs to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. So I thought, well, I'll make that a bathroom. To relate to the size of the space, I put a very long counter in there. I've been working with a carpenter throughout this whole thing named Stephen Hall, and he put a hole in that wall and created a window. And then I situated a bathtub so you look out at this gorgeous maple tree, and in the fall, it's just bright orange. So bathing in general is very ceremonial, and it's also so metaphorical for birthing and cleansing and purifying. And ever since I put that bath in, I've become a devoted bath person. I think I've made some pretty nice bathrooms. It's quite a small space. I can pretty much stretch my arms across and touch the walls. So I made it a wet room, and I put in all that beautiful small marble stones so that you won't slip in the shower. And then I got the tiniest sink in the universe. Like, I had a friend say, what is that thing in there pretending to be a sink? But because it's a wet room, it doesn't matter if it splashes all over, and I fell in love with it as an object. I like squares, and there's a square toilet, and people are like, what? You know, people question my choices, but I don't question my choices. So when you have such a large space to work with, you have to think about scale. Things, objects, and people can feel easily just diminished. If you're up to it, it's quite expansive, and it creates your personal largesse and your kind of upward feeling awesomeness of a space, which churches are intended to do, right? You walk in them, you're supposed to feel toward heaven. But you put a small object in here and it becomes smaller. You have to build the space in a way where it relates to the scale of the architecture, and that's a challenge. So I had this huge table built actually for a former large space, but it works beautifully here, and it anchors the space, as do the rugs, and they create little rooms, if you will, and divide the space. They're not typical living rooms, but people seem to gather and use space in original ways. There are some quite large pieces, and then there's some more intimate pieces. And I think if they play off of each other, then it can work in a large space like this. People always ask me how I heat this place. Peter Davis put in 4 Rinnai heaters in this big space, and then zoned all the other spaces. They were also beige, and I painted them black. So that they would sort of go away. I can have the heat very low and come back from work and have it at 75 in half an hour. It's nice and warm in the winter, surprisingly, and really pleasant in the summer. I've never air conditioned it. Peter also put these fans in, which I think help heating and cooling. They go with the sort of more contemporary aesthetic that I brought to this place, so I left them. And you feel like you're maybe sitting Tangiers or something. I spent quite a bit of time, 3 weeks, putting enamel-based oil, 3 coats, on the floors. Not just this floor, but throughout the whole house. The high gloss then reflects everything, and you have a mirror effect going on, which also brightens a place, and it always makes it look clean and fresh. And if the sun comes out, you can see how brilliant it all is when the sun graces the room. Changing from the gray, it just brightened everything, and yeah, I'm very happy with it. People, are daunted by the thought of keeping it clean, but I'm like, yeah, well, you have to pay to play. This place is particularly rewarding because it embraces community so beautifully. When I first started living here, there was a young woman who was staying with me she was a chef. And she started a practice called radical hospitality, which is an ancient concept coming out of the monastery, where you would open your doors and welcome everyone and feed them. She'd make a big pot of soup and bake a bunch of bread, and it was just gorgeous. And it really sort of was the housewarming. It was the initial definition of asking community, or letting community know that this wasn't just one woman rattling around in this huge space, but that it was a space to share. And that was my intent in getting this enormous space, is to really have it be a community asset and to welcome folks in. So in keeping with my theme of welcoming community, after I painted the floors, I wanted to build a table and feed as many people as I could. And these pews were actually here. I wanted some things that were remnants of the history of this place. I kept the pews and I painted them and I built this table to fit the pews exactly. I am obviously not a carpenter. It's pretty rudimentary, but you put a coat of paint on it and it sort of worked. It's used all the time and I'm very happy about that and the pews. This other pew I bought in Ellsworth, but I thought, yeah, the more pews, the better. The outside of the church was so in need of a paint job that I thought I just might polish the aluminum siding and have it turn into a big tin can. I mean, it was really down to the metal, pretty much. I decided to paint it black. That was 7 years ago. Black houses had become more in fashion, but actually black churches are traditional in Iceland. So I wasn't that weird, but the neighborhood, I had a guy all dressed in black on a big black Harley pull up and goes, you know, what are you painting your house black for? I'm like, well, you seem to like the color black pretty well. It makes the space, the building, less dominant in the neighborhood. I think that it quiets it down. If I had made it another color or even white, it would be larger. I think it really works, and I love the way that the black works with green. So I planted a lot of trees, and I also love to garden, so I've had a lot of fun doing that. But it's quite a formal garden. I wanted to really honor the elegance of this building. And I also love that it's sort of a big square. People thought I had turned this into a place for Satan worship and all kinds of bizarre things. But I think what's really nice about painting it black, when you approach it at night, you don't really see the house, but you see these long windows of light, these candles, if you will. My neighbors were very pleased when I put a bright yellow railing on because that was my bit of humor. There's a little playfulness to adding such a bright color. I think that gives it a bit of levity and lets you know that human beings live in here that, sometimes smile. I did buy this place to share it. I like to host people. I don't have a family or a partner, and so I create one through community. There's been so much dancing and partying in this space, and it functions exactly as I envisioned in terms of welcoming folks in. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to HGTV.